She got her nails done, wore the blue dress he loved. She was sure tonight was the night he'd propose. He broke up with her instead. No ring, no explanation that made sense. Just 4 years of her paying his rent, forgiving his cheating, funding his failed dreams, gone in one sentence. She didn't cry in front of him. She waited until she was 3 blocks away, alone in her car. Then she did the one thing you should never do after a night like that. She went and got drunk with strangers. She had no idea the man who'd find her in that alley 3 hours later ran half the city, and not the legal half. If you love stories like this, hit subscribe now because you don't want to miss what happens tonight. Let's get into it. Here's the thing. Vanessa should have seen it coming. She just didn't want to. 3 weeks earlier, James had told her, "I have something to share with you." Soft voice, careful, the kind of tone he only used for good news. So she circled the date on her calendar. She pictured a ring. 4 years, and this is the tally. She paid her rent every time he was between jobs. She forgave him more than once when she found messages from other women. She bought him notebooks for business ideas that never left the page. She was the only stable thing in a man who couldn't hold a job or a promise. And he sat across from her over coffee neither of them touched and said things had run their course, that he needed space to find himself. 4 years, summed up in a sentence he probably rehearsed in the shower. She smiled, said, "Okay," and walked out like she still had it together. She lost it 3 blocks later, sobbing into her steering wheel, mascara everywhere, the blue dress suddenly feeling ridiculous. And then she did the one thing a lot of us do after a night like that. She didn't go home. She went somewhere loud enough to drown it out. If you've ever had someone break your heart after you gave them everything, comment "I understand" below. Let's keep going. The bar was called Emberline. Gold lighting, low music, the kind of place designed to look expensive. What Vanessa didn't know, what nobody walking in off the street would guess, is that Emberline belonged to a man named Orlando. On paper, Orlando ran restaurants, a logistics company, a couple of nightclubs, and, weirdly, a chain of laundromats that never lost money. Clean books, legitimate businesses. Underneath that, a second empire, quieter, deadlier, the kind of name people only said in a whisper and only when they were sure no one else was listening. But you want to know the one thing Orlando never touched? Love. His mother loved his father through everything, the drinking, the bruises, the nights he didn't come home. She loved him right up until the day he left for good, and she loved him after that too, still hoping, still waiting for a man who was never coming back. Orlando watched her fall apart for someone who didn't deserve one more second of her. So he made a promise at her grave. Love wasn't going to make a fool out of him, ever. He was upfront about it with every woman who came after. "I'm not interested in anything serious. No games, no pretending, just a door that stayed locked." That night, he was driving home from a late meeting when he saw something that made him hit the brakes. A man named Carl had followed her outside. Security had already thrown him out once for getting handsy with her at the bar. Now she was stumbling, one heel gone, phone slipping out of her hand, and Carl grabbed her arm in the alley. What happened to Carl in that alley? Let's just say he learned a lesson he's still walking with. Security never saw him near Emberline again. Vanessa barely registered any of it, just strong arms lifting her off the ground, a low voice saying, "You're okay, I've got you." Then nothing, darkness, and the faint smell of expensive cologne. Vanessa woke up somewhere that wasn't hers, silk sheets, a ceiling way too high for any apartment she'd ever lived in. Panic hit her chest like a fist before her eyes even fully opened. Then she saw the woman by the window, older, warm-eyed, knitting needles clicking away like this was any other Tuesday. "Don't be afraid, dear," the woman said. "You had too much to drink last night. My employer brought you here to keep you safe. Nothing happened. You're safe." She introduced herself as Mrs. O'Dallas. Mama O to anyone who stuck around long enough. She handed Vanessa aspirin, pointed her towards a hot shower, and nodded at the dress hanging pressed and clean on the door. "You remind me of my granddaughter," Mama O said. And something about it, the plainness of it, no performance in her voice, made Vanessa's shoulders finally drop. Downstairs, breakfast looked like it belonged in a five-star hotel. Vanessa asked the obvious question, "Whose house is this?" "My employer will explain everything when he returns," Mama O said simply. "He had a meeting this morning. He said to make sure you were comfortable. If this story's pulling you in, hit that like button. It genuinely helps the channel, and the best part's coming."
Miles away, Orlando sat in a boardroom full of men twice his age trying to negotiate shipment routes. He couldn't focus. Numbers blurred. He lost his train of thought mid-sentence twice. All he could see was her face, mascara smudged, eyes glassy from crying, and somehow still the most striking thing he'd seen in years. "This is weakness," he told himself. "Love makes people stupid. Love killed my mother. I'm not doing this." His mind went back to her anyway. It always did. When he finally got home, he found Vanessa perched stiffly on the edge of the couch, hands folded, clearly running through every version of thank you that wouldn't sound insane to say to a man like him. He didn't waste time. He told her everything. Carl, the alley, the drive home, nothing more. No games. He made it clear, in a tone that left no room for doubt, she was safe and he expected nothing from her. "Whenever you're ready," he said, "I'll take you home. No conditions." The ride was quiet, not the awkward kind, the kind where neither person wants to be the one to break it. Before she got out of the car, he asked for her number. Not smooth, not a line. "If you're ever in trouble again," he said, "call me immediately." She nodded, still shaken, not just from the night, from him. For 3 days straight, Vanessa couldn't get him out of her head. He was intimidating. There was something in his eyes that said he'd seen things, done things most people never would. But he'd also protected her when he owed her absolutely nothing. So she called him. "I'd like to take you to dinner," she said, voice steadier than she felt. "To properly thank you." Silence on the other end, the kind of silence that comes from a man surprised by his own excitement. "Friday, 8 p.m., he said. Simple as that. The restaurant wasn't glamorous, a small Italian place where the owner remembered your name after one visit, but the conversation flowed like they'd known each other for years, not 2 encounters. He told her he was a businessman. She didn't push. Somehow she already knew there was more underneath, and somehow she didn't need to know it yet. Then, near the end of the night, her walls came down. She told him everything. 4 years with James, the money, the cheating she kept forgiving, the proposal she was sure was coming, and the goodbye she got instead. Orlando just listened, didn't interrupt once. When she finished, all he said was, "He didn't deserve you." 4 words, but they landed somewhere James's 4 years of empty promises never touched. On the drive home, Orlando caught himself stealing glances at her, at red lights, at stop signs, in every quiet in-between moment. He didn't understand what was happening to him. He just knew he didn't want the night to end. They said goodnight at her door. No kiss, no promises, just 2 people walking back into separate lives, both a little more shaken than they expected to be. Weeks passed. Neither of them called. Orlando tried to bury it the way he buried everything, staying busy, keeping his distance, doing what he always did when something got too close. He even tried seeing other women. Didn't work. Something in him had shifted, quietly and permanently, and he hated that as much as he craved it. Eventually, he couldn't fight it anymore, so he called her, and framed it as a favor, an investor's ball he had to attend, an event he called boring, insisting he just needed a familiar face there because women were always circling him at those things, chasing the city's most eligible bachelor, not actual business. Then, almost like it slipped out, he added something he'd never said to anyone before. Please. Vanessa smiled at her phone, telling herself this was just a favor for a friend. She said yes, anyway. We're almost at the good part, the part where everything changes. Stick around and drop a like if you're feeling this one. He sent his personal stylist to help her pick a gown. Saturday night, Orlando was outside her building at 7 p.m. sharp. No rushing her, no impatience, just waiting, quietly, the way a man waits for something he doesn't want to admit matters to him. Then she stepped out, deep red gown, hugging every curve with a kind of quiet confidence. Orlando actually froze, mouth slightly open, flowers still in his hand. "You look stunning," he said, and he meant every syllable. When they walked into the ball, every eye in the room turned to her. Then came the introductions. "This is my friend, Vanessa," he said to the first group. "A friend of mine," he repeated to the next. Same word every time, and every time something in Vanessa's chest tightened a little more. She understood the walls he'd built around his heart. She just hadn't expected it to hurt this much, hearing them said out loud. So she did the one thing her pride would let her do. She drifted into the crowd, laughed at other men's jokes, danced with strangers, anything to prove she didn't need his approval. She could feel his eyes on her the entire time, sharp, locked in, unmistakably jealous, even if he'd never in a million years admit it. As the night wound down, the last song started. Before another man could reach for her hand, Orlando was already there. Steady gaze, unreadable, burning underneath. They danced. Neither said a word. The tension between them was louder than the music. When it was time to go, he took her hand, not casually, the way someone holds on to something they're suddenly terrified of losing. In the car, the silence got too heavy for Vanessa to carry. "You seem angry," she said finally. "Did I do something wrong?" Orlando turned to look at her. Something flickered behind his eyes, vulnerability, maybe, for the first time in years. "You want the honest answer?" "Yes. Watching you dance with another man tonight did something to me. You called us friends. I let you believe that because I thought it was safer for both of us." He leaned in slightly, voice low, almost unsteady. "I've loved you since the night I picked you up in that alley, Vanessa. I've spent every day since trying to convince myself I didn't. I can't do it anymore." She didn't let him finish. She closed the distance and kissed him. And after years of guarding his heart like a locked vault, Orlando finally let it open, kissing her like a man who'd just found the one thing he never knew he was looking for. They finally broke apart, both a little out of breath, both a little stunned at themselves. Orlando rested his forehead against hers. For a man who ran half a city, legal side and otherwise, he suddenly looked like he had no idea what to do with his hands. "I don't know how to do this," he admitted, voice low. "I've never let anyone this close, not once, not ever." "Then don't figure it all out tonight," Vanessa said. "Just don't walk away from it either." He almost laughed, quiet, disbelieving, like the sound surprised even him. "That's the problem. I don't want to." He walked her to her door. No dramatic music swell, no big declaration, just his hand still holding hers like he wasn't quite ready to give it back. When he finally let go, he pressed a kiss to her forehead instead of her lips, slower, quieter, like a promise instead of a question. "Good night, Vanessa." "Good night, Orlando." She stepped inside. He didn't leave, not yet. He stood by the car and watched until the light in her window turned on, and only then did he finally drive off. A man who'd spent his whole life guarding a locked door, now leaving it open on purpose for the first time. 4 years she gave to a man who threw her away without a second thought. One night, one terrible, unplanned, mascara-streaked night, she gave to a stranger, and it rewrote both of their lives. If this story moved you, hit like, subscribe, and drop a comment. Should Vanessa and Orlando get a part 2?